Hello, my name is Lewis, and I love Christmas. I love everything about it. The snow, the lights. I'm sorry. But most of all, I love the reason for the season. That's why this year, as a Christian, I got so tired of hearing that disrespectful phrase. You know the one. Happy holidays. Every time somebody'd say it to me, I would give them a good old Merry Christmas right in their face. Booyah for the Messiah!
Stop getting riled up. You're gonna hurt yourself.
Mom! I'm trying to talk here!
Whatever. I'm calling Dr. Goldstein.
Sorry. I had to move back in with my mother after all this.
Tell the truth, sweetie.
Fine. Fine. I've always lived with my mother.
Against my better judgment.
Mom! Mom! Can I just tell my story? So recently, I went to the supermarket to pick up some eggnog. As I walked in, the guy standing next to the grocery carts throws a big, "Happy holidays, mister," right in my face like it's no big deal. But guess what?
What, honey?
It was a rhetorical question, Mom. I am building the drama of the story.
Always so dramatic.
What? Oh, I'm the dramatic one? Oh, really? Anyway, the kid, this Happy Holidays punk, just got me riled up. So I grab the nog and I go to pay. The clerk rings me up, and what does she say? Happy Holidays. I was enraged. I was in a blind fury. I jump up on the counter, I grab the microphone, and I yell into it. It's not a holiday, people! It's Christmas! I'm mad as heck, and I'm not gonna take it anymore! Unfortunately, my foot slipped, triggering the conveyor belt. Now, bread and milk doesn't seem to be moving too fast, but a 175-pound man flies off that belt. And fly I did. Not like a majestic eagle or a Superman. I flew like a partridge falling out of a pear tree. I flew into a display of Chia Pet nativity sets. Thus, my current condition. And then something funny happened. A gift arrived for me. Mom, little help, please? No, not that one. No. No, to your left. Your left! No, the one that arrived! That's the one. Thank you.
You watch your tone with me, mister.
Huh? It was from Elizabeth. The girl whose checkout stand I'd commandeered. She'd given me a gift. At first, it didn't make sense. I didn't deserve anything good from her. Not the way I acted. I acted like a maniac. But then I got to thinking. I had been bound up in religion. And I didn't want to be bound up anymore. Religion is always having to be right. Grace, that's being right with others, being right with God. So this gift, I don't know what's in it. It could be more eggnog. It could be a Chia Pet nativity set. Doesn't matter. The real gift is better than either of those things.
Oh, you two are destined for wedlock.
Mom! Why did you do that? Why do you always go there? We're not going to get married!
It's a match made.
I don't even know her!
But you said she
It
was...
doesn't matter if I said she was cute!
Well, Merry Christmas, and And thanks for, in this Christmas season, thanks for just being able to lighten things up a little bit with us, have a little bit of fun, and try to, in the middle of a stressful season, try to make the most of it, enjoy it some. And I did get another nomination for an ugly Christmas sweater for today. And it was a bit of a question which sweater would win, but with Leon's firm nomination, I decided to go with Leon. You did such a great, I don't know if I can represent as well, but you did a great job with that. So this is today's Singing Christmas Tree honorary ugly sweater. By the way, I don't know if you noticed when, we were so caught up in the story as Leon was telling. I don't know if you ever noticed the back side of it here, and we're having fun this Christmas, okay? So just relax. But see Rudolph on the front side, and then when you flip it around, you get... That's right. A little bit of peppermint poo. So I'll face forward. Don't worry. You won't have to be distracted by that. So this is today's ugly Christmas sweater winner. And give me a second here, and we will. That's right. Have a little fun this Christmas. Make the most of it. All right, one time. One there, that's... All right. And one nose. All weekend long, it's just been like, grab my Bible, look down, there's the nose. Like someone said, I've always wanted an Audi, so yeah, there you go. We're going to be able to do this? I don't know. That's right. My eyes are up here, right? Right, Scott? It's a little too far again? All right. It's time for a drink of water. So I several years ago, was asked to officiate at a wedding. And for this wedding, the couple didn't go to our church. They were kind of friends of friends or so, and so invited me to do the wedding. And in the course of planning for the wedding and preparing, they told me that it was their goal and intention that the wedding would be very, very informal, very casual, very relaxed. They were going to hold the wedding at like an Eagles or an Elks Lodge, and that out on the back deck, and it was going to be a hot summer day anyways. And so they just really emphasized they just wanted to be really casual and relaxed ceremony. And so the day of the ceremony comes, and I'm getting dressed, and normally I would go get my, I have like a suit. I'm not real big on kind of wearing suits all the time. Luckily here, don't have to. And so I have a suit. It's the dark suit you wear for weddings and other serious occasions. And so, but then I remembered what they had told me, and then they told me that, like, don't wear the suit, it's just casual and relaxed, and I looked, and so I against better judgment, elected to go with the khakis and the brown casual shirt, because that's what they told me to wear, and I wasn't quite sure, I was questioning myself, and probably shouldn't have, but was kind of running late anyway, so I got in the car, drive over to the wedding, and I show up, and there is the bride in her long white dress. There's all the bridesmaids in their matching long, beautiful dresses. There's all the groomsmen in their suits and tuxedos, and here I am, misdressed for the occasion. Okay, that's not true. I didn't misdress. I put that outfit on. I went, looked in the mirror, and thought, I just can't do it. Just in case I misunderstood, just in case they changed the plans that didn't tell me, it's one of those kind of fears that I have. If I had a recurring nightmare, like this would be the recurring nightmare, that I show up, underdressed for the occasion, and everybody, laughs at me and stuff. And so I actually, and then I wear anyways. So I went back, I took off the khakis and the shirt, put on the suit, and when I arrived, you can imagine I was so glad that I did, because that for me is one of those situations that's super awkward. I don't always know how to dress, and I'm always really careful to make sure that I'm not underdressed for the occasion. I don't want to stand out. I don't want to feel as if I don't belong here. This Christmas, we're talking about awkward family Christmas. We're looking at what in the Christmas story is a little bit awkward. And one of one of the things that I hear from folks is when it comes to the things of God, things of religion, is people who will say that, when it comes to God, church, religion, I just feel as if I don't belong. They'll say, Jason, if you only knew the things that I have done, the things in my past that I'm embarrassed of, that God must be mad at me for what I've done, and I don't belong here. Folks would say, I just have a lot of questions and I'm not sure. And every time I ask those questions, or when I asked them when I was a kid in Sunday school, and I was shut down and shot down and told that my questions were too difficult, and they told me to be quiet. You see, I just don't belong here. It's awkward. And if you've ever felt like church or Jesus are not for you, and you feel like you don't belong, I want you to hear today that the Christmas story is for you. It's your story. When the angel comes to Mary and announces to Mary that she is going to bear a child, and miraculously by the power of God, here's just a couple of the lines that we read about this baby. He, your son, he will be great. He will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over Jacob's descendants forever. His kingdom will never end. Pretty much what any mother would love to hear prophesied over their baby, right? Your baby will be a king, and he will have a kingdom that will never end. So think about it then. If he's going to be a king at his birth, we would expect to see a king or other royalty there honoring the birth of the newborn king. We'd expect it to be a big royal deal. Kind of like a couple of years ago when Prince George in England, Prince George was born. And if you remember, the news and that's just what everybody was talking about, and crowds were gathered outside of the hospital waiting for this baby to be born. Everyone in the world was paying attention, and at the time it was born, there were celebrations all over England and all over their countries. Connected countries, like huge celebrations. I read that the royal mint minted a coin to honor his birth. I discovered there were 21 gun salutes in various countries all around the world. That there were blue banners hung all over government buildings. Church bells were ringing because it was a big deal. Why? Because Prince George is third in line for the royal throne. And when someone in line for the royal throne is born, it's a big deal and everyone celebrates. In fact, I read that as a toddler, folks started calling it the Prince George effect, because whatever he wore and was broadcast and people got a picture, even food that he ate, the sales of those clothes or that food would skyrocket right after that, because people wanted their kid to be just like little Prince George. In fact, GQ ranked him number 49 best dressed men in Britain as a 3-year-old. Because his style was so influential. Why? Because he's a big deal. He's royalty. He's third in line for the throne. And what do we expect? We expect to make a big deal out of that. We come to the Christmas story. The King of Kings is born here on earth. What do we expect? We expect to make a big deal out of it. We expect it to be a holy moment, yes, but we expect a setting that is luxurious, royal, comfortable, dignified. But what do we see? Well, yeah, we see angels. We see the angels of heaven coming and announcing the birth of this baby. And then that was kind of in the myths and the stories of old. That's kind of what had happened. This time it actually happens, like the angels of heaven come and they say, the king has been born, and it's a big deal. But who do the angels go to? Who does God say, hey, angels, go and announce the birth of the king? Not at the palace, not to the elite, not to the leaders, but the angels show up to announce the birth of Jesus, the king, to shepherds. Now, scholars are kind of a little bit mixed in their opinion of what was the general attitude towards shepherds of the day. Some people think that shepherds were, highly regarded, that it was an honorable occupation. Others think that they were kind of looked down upon. But for sure, what everybody agrees on is that shepherds were closer to the bottom of social structure than they were the top of social structure. In fact, in some places in ancient times, shepherds were so mistrusted and they carried such a bad reputation that their testimony was not even allowed in court. Now, that may not have been the case at this time, but at least what we see is we just see a regular old group of guys, hardworking, not like the influencers of society, though. And when God chooses to send his angels as messengers to announce the birth of the king, he sends them to regular old shepherds. It's not what we expect. And then when the angels do come, they say, here's what you're looking for. Don't go to the palace. Don't look for royalty, luxury, comfort, any of that. You will find the baby wrapped in cloths, as you would find any ordinary commoner child, lying in a manger. Now, for lots of years, I just, kind of growing up in church, hearing this story ever since I was a kid, I just thought a manger was like a Bible word for like a place you put Jesus, like Jesus, manger. I didn't know there was any other way you would ever use the word manger outside of the Bible until I discovered one day that like manger is just a generic word. It has like no special holy meaning at all. It's just simply feeding trough. Like that's how you would do it. Like everybody, every farmer in their barn, in their cave where they kept their animals, whatever, they would just have, a rough boards nailed together, maybe in the shape of a V like you've seen before, and they would toss the food in there for the animals. What are they going to toss it into? The feeding trough, also known as the manger. Nothing special at all, no religious significance, other than the craziness of the angel who says, where are you going to find the King of Heaven? In a feeding trough. And again, all of our expectations of how this story should go based on who the angel says he is doesn't go that way. And here's what I want you to hear today, if you have ever felt like an outsider, like you're not in the popular crowd, that you were unknown, that you were overlooked, it is easy to think that God might see you the same way, unknown, overlooked, not in the popular crowd, and he's God, so he likes the popular kids. But in Christmas, here's what we see. The Christmas story reminds us that God regularly chooses outsiders and he makes them insiders. And if you have always put yourself in the outsider group, you are just who God came for and just the one God is looking for. What we see, consistent in the story of Jesus at his birth and all through his ministry, is that God regularly reveals himself to regular, ordinary people, which means God is ready to reveal himself to you. And what we see is that God regularly raises up unknown people who might feel as if they are completely insignificant to God and everybody around them. But God chooses these relatively insignificant people. He sees incredible potential in them. And through his power in their life and his presence in their life, he does incredible things and he changes their lives and he does incredible things through them, which means that's you. That God sees you no matter how insignificant you might feel that you are, that you have significance, and God sees incredible potential in you for what he could do in and through you, and he wants to change your life. You are just the person God is looking for. You unsure about that? Christ followers around this room could go around and share our story of how God saw something in us that we didn't see, and through his power and presence in us has done great things through us. Today I want you to hear the story of Rudy Kalis. He was in more kind of the Midwest and Nashville area, well-known popular sports newscaster. And as he shares his story, I want you to hear that he saw himself like a lot of us see ourselves, as an outsider, struggling to fit in, struggling to find our place, and then Jesus invaded his life and changed everything. Maybe this is the story you need to hear this Christmas, and stop seeing yourself as the outsider neglected by God, but you are the outsider God would love to make an insider. Check out Rudy's story and be inspired by it today.
The hardest thing for me in my life, it's pride. It just eats me up. I'm in an ego business where you walk around and you want to be recognized. You're full of yourself. You get to go to sporting events. Excuse me, I've got to go do interviews. Everything in my work is to be first. Jam it down, people. You know all the answers. And so if you deflate me, it just kills me inside because I'm not worthy. I wasn't born in this country. My parents are Russian. During World War II, my father was in the Russian army, was captured by the Germans. He met my mother in a refugee camp in the southern part of Germany after World War II. In 1952, they immigrated to the United States. I think about that and say, how do you make that kind of a decision? How do you decide that you're going to leave that country and go to another world? Well, I'm a little 5-year-old kid. I got a 7-year-old sister who's a little older than me, and we got on a ship, and I can still remember the smell of the steel. It was the biggest thing that I'd ever seen, and we got on board and came across. It was like an adventure to me. And I can remember cruising into New York Harbor. It was in June, a sunny day. I remember seeing the Statue of Liberty. Didn't have any idea what it was, but saw it, looked at it. A lot of people were lying on the deck, and a lot of them were crying. My dad told me afterwards, because they were concerned. I mean, what are you going to do in this land? I remember going to school in kindergarten. I'd come home crying about every day because I didn't know how to talk English and thought the kids were laughing at this dumb little foreign kid. My mind was out the window. My parents would keep saying to me, Rudy, why can't you get grades like your sister? Why can't you study? And education was key to them. Not all of us, but a lot of us, one of two things happens. That we get in those formative teenage years, and either somebody, and I had a coach or parents without knowing it, would say to me, what's wrong with you? You never amount to anything. Or a coach, you can't play a lick. You don't have any guts. What's wrong with you? You can't get into the game. Get somebody else in here. And it, boom, it sinks down inside of you. Or else, if you're fortunate, somebody says to you, you're magnificent, you know, mathematics, and your music flies from you. You're going to be great someday. And I've realized at this point, it's not all of us, but there are a lot of us that have spent the rest of our lives trying to either prove somebody right or prove somebody wrong. I think I've tried to prove somebody wrong ever since. I flunked out of college after a year. Wasn't smart enough, thought. Went in the military for 4 years. Came back and took a radio production course. I thought that'd be so interesting. I knew I wouldn't be good enough to be a professional athlete, but if I could be around him in broadcasting. I finished 4 years of college in 3 years. I think I was trying to prove somebody wrong again. I got a job in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I wasn't even in news. I helped a little bit, and then after a year or so, a year and a half up there, the sports director quit. And I thought, ooh, you know, I'm making $8,000 a year. And they said, well, we're caught off guard, so why don't you fill in for a little bit of time? And I did. And after a month, they had a consultant group watch, and they called me into a room, and these two guys sat with me and said, Rudy, why don't you get out of broadcasting? I mean, you're a nice guy, sales, you're just not suited for broadcasting. Boom. There again, not good enough. What's wrong with you? Why can't you study? All of this sort of stuff inside of me. So I didn't want to take no for an answer. Sent out tapes, and one of them was to Nashville, Tennessee, and they hired me. And I thought, this is my career. This is where I'm going. It's kind of neat. People recognize you. I was 31 years old. I was so busy trying to be somebody. I was married, and I wasn't spending any time at home. I was so busy that my wife and I separated. You know, I was too immature, or for whatever reason, it just broke me. I'm driving down the road one day, and I pound the steering wheel in my car, and I'm saying, God, help me. I'm 31, and I haven't been in church since I was 18 years old because I didn't want to be around phony Christians. And I go into this restaurant, and this man walks over to me. And he wasn't even from Nashville, but he walks all the way across, comes and looks at me, and he says, are you all right? You look like something's bothering you. And I, no. And he said, wait. And he sat there, and he told me about hope, told me about a God who loved me, a Jesus Christ who had died for me. These things that I'd heard way back then, these seeds that had planted when I was back in grade school and high school, none of it was alive. And all of a sudden, boom, it's hitting me right between the eyes. I said, what is this? I said, God, if you're for real, I mean, I'm a reporter, you're gonna have to show me. This is gonna have to be consistency of time. And all of a sudden, I began to listen to other people, and I began to look at other people, and my life began to change. I began to see that the way I do my work impacted other people, that I could be cynical, I could be negative, I could be critical, which is so popular now. Somehow we think that people that are in your face and know it all, that it's a sign of intelligence, and that's bull. It doesn't work that way. It's not the way God intended it. And God began to make me look into other people's eyes and to listen to them and to realize that I impact thousands of lives by the spirit with which I do my work on television every single day. I've realized that the more I've grown in Christ, the more my life is diametrically opposed to what's considered successful in this business. And the glory of having Him inside of me now is that I realize my purpose is that this sportscasting and the work that I do is a vehicle to touch people's lives with His Spirit. And somehow He knew that this little immigrant kid who stumbled around and made all these dumb mistakes, that He could mold him and shape him and make him go through things that he didn't want to go through, but that He could use them at the other end of his life in a way to touch other people's lives. My name is Rudy Kalis, and I am second.
So we see the same in the Christmas story. A bunch of people who thought they were overlooked and unknown, probably spending their lives trying to prove somebody right, prove somebody wrong, and God invades their situation and changes everything. There's a second group of people, so we don't see any kings, we don't see any royalty at the birth of Jesus. There's a second group of people that we're wondering about as well. When the angel goes to Joseph, we find something interesting. The angel's talking to Joseph, we read it in Matthew chapter 1, and talking about Mary, he says, she, Mary, she'll give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. All of a sudden, now he's going to talk more about the spiritual side of things than the king side of things, right? Now, all this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet, and he quotes the prophet here. The virgin will conceive, give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, and I love this part, which means God with us. So he says that this son that you and Mary get to raise, yes, he'll be a king, but he will be a spiritual leader, for he will be God with us. Now, you would think then, if God, who usually we think of as out there somewhere, if God is going to go from out there somewhere to here with us, we would expect there at his birth to be celebrated by religious leaders, by priests, by spiritual giants, the spirit, like everybody who has given their lives to godly things. We don't even see them in the story. Here's where we do see them. Like, what were they doing? Check this out. Matthew keeps telling this story in Matthew chapter 2. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem, in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem, and they asked, "Where is the one who's been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose, and we have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "Well, in Bethlehem of Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written," and they quote the prophet. "But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, you are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." So Herod called the Magi secretly. He found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem, and he said, "Go, search carefully for the child, and as soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose ahead of them, it went ahead until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped him. Then they opened their treasures. They presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. What we see here is some spiritualistic, probably astrologers, worshipers of another god from another place, are the only spiritual leaders who worship Jesus. Do you see the irony here? Here's King Herod, and he's kind of been the king who's been appointed by the Roman government to rule over this land that's being occupied by Rome, and he hears from some foreigners about the newly born king of the Jews, and how does he respond? Because, he's the current king of the Jews. The text says that he is disturbed. that we see rising up in Herod, this insane jealousy, so much so that the reason the Magi were warned in a dream to go back by another route and not go back to Herod is in the next story, Herod is going to pursue Jesus to try to take his life, not worship him. But look what happens, though. In order to do that, the Magi come. They're like, we're looking for the newborn king of the Jews, the one who's just been born king of the Jews. Where can we find him? Herod says, well, I don't really know, but I know a couple guys who will. He grabs the chief priests, religious leaders who have spent their lives pursuing God and helping people do the same. And he says, so Magi from the east came. They're looking for the newborn king of you people. Like, where can I find him? They're like, well, that's easy if you'd read your Bible. And they whip out their Bibles. They show them right where it is. It's Bethlehem, which just happens to be 4 miles down the road. Now, think about this. Think about this. If you're a religious leader who has spent your life reading the scriptures, waiting for the Messiah, waiting for God to do something great, and you hear about astrologers who have seen a star right at this place who's brought them here, and they're here to worship the newborn king of the Jews, what do? Like, you beat Herod and all of his guys and the Magi and everybody else there because you're so invested in this, and you go find the baby and worship him. But they don't. Foreigners go worship. Herod's cooking up plans to get rid of Jesus. The religious leaders, they're like, meh. I don't get it. And they totally missed him. We would expect Jesus to be surrounded by rich, powerful, or religious elites. None of it. What were the rich and the powerful and the elites doing? They were disturbed by Jesus. They were disturbed by the birth of Jesus because Herod leads the way in feeling threatened by Jesus and all of his power and influence and notoriety that he had. When there's a newborn king of the Jews who has been born, all of a sudden he has competition. Because he doesn't know God and he hasn't found his identity in God, he immediately feels threatened and has to remove the threat. He's so threatened by Jesus. Herod was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him, including, unfortunately, the religious leaders, who, as we see when Jesus grew up, and as he began to teach the truth of God and the grace of God, and he began to draw a crowd, and they began to lose their influence, they also felt threatened by him. These people, these religious leaders who they always had to be right, they could never admit when they were wrong, and they felt threatened by him. And the job that Herod started, they finished. And they missed him. So here's what we see in the Christmas story. Jesus came for anyone. He came for outsiders. He also came for insiders. But whether you're an outsider or an insider, Jesus came for anyone who's humble enough to admit you need him. And the problem with the kings and the religious leaders, they couldn't admit they needed Jesus, and they missed him. And don't think for a minute this is just the rich and powerful. Think you're off the hook because you're neither. No, they're really good. They illustrate it well. You heard the story of Rudy, right? He said, I had something to prove, or I was trying to prove somebody wrong or trying to prove somebody right my whole life. Compete, and had to be better, and had to prove myself. As long as that's you, having to prove yourself to somebody, prove somebody right, prove somebody wrong so that you can be a somebody all by yourself, you will never be humble enough to admit you need Jesus. And you'll miss just like the leaders did. In fact, the Apostle Paul, another generation later, picks up on this in writing a letter to a group of Christians who had become a little bit spiritually prideful. He says, God chose, remember Christians, God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. Remember? Shepherds in a stable, not a palace. God chose the lowly things of this world. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly things of the world, the despised things, the things that are not, to nullify the things that are, get this, so that no one may boast before him. And if you're the thinker who has to have everything all figured out and Jesus and the Bible are a little too much for you, and so you've dismissed it because it doesn't make sense. Jesus invites you to humble yourself and accept even what seems to be foolishness. And with that humility, you receive Jesus and all that he has to offer for your life. And that if you are strong, and if you have established success by being strong and stronger than others, and you can go harder and go longer, and you can outlast all of your opponents because of your strength, Jesus says, until you humble yourself and admit your weakness, you're going to miss out on everything he has for you. For we see illustrated so well in the Christmas story that God chose the lowly things of the world, the things that are despised by others, as outsiders, who Jesus sees as insiders and is revealed to them. And so in the Christmas story, we're left with this image of a poor young couple in cold, dark, dirty, smelly settings, surrounded by animals and shepherds. And at the center of it, which makes this a holy moment, is the Son of God, King of Kings, the Savior of the world and each of our lives. And you and I can either get down and enter the filth and the dirt and the mud and bow our knee in the middle of the mud and the straw before the King. Or we can say, I'm too good for all that and miss out. And Jesus says, all are welcome and all are invited. And if you, like the shepherd, like Mary, like Joseph, have ever felt like an outsider, Jesus says, I want to invite you to be an insider. You got to bow before me, though, and humble yourself. And if you'll humble yourself, say, God, I need you to change my life. God, I need you to lead my life. Jesus will do it. Maybe this Christmas, you're the longtime Christian. Maybe for decades you've been following Jesus, and you could look back at the time when you humbled yourself and you bowed the knee before Jesus, and Jesus, forgive me of my sins and come into my life and clean me up, and you remember it, and you remember the life change. But if you're honest, that now it's been a little while, and you've been responsible and obedient, and God's blessed you in so many great ways, but in all that success, you've kind of become self-sufficient. What do you know? You don't pray with desperation like you used to. You aren't taking those spiritual risks like you used to. In fact, if you're honest, you'd realize you're not giving yourself to much outside of yourself anymore. And you've become comfortable. And maybe it's time to humble yourself again. To get dirty. Kneel before the King of Kings and the God of Gods, and the dirt and straw floor, and say, these are my people, and Jesus, I need you. So let's pray together today. Let's see God in these last moments of worship before we go. God, we need you. God, I pray that we all would recognize just how lost we are without you, just how great is our need for you, and just how wonderful you are to come to us, to be with us, to rescue us. God, I thank you that no one is beyond your reach, and God, I thank you that you overlook no one, that you cast aside no one. God, thank you that no one has to be an outsider in your kingdom, because God, that gives hope to me. God, my prayer today is that with the humility of Mary and Joseph and those shepherds, Lord, that we too would simply kneel before you and confess once again, we need you, God. Would you come into our lives? Would you clean us up? Would you forgive us of our sins and our self-destructive thoughts and behaviors? Would you make us brand new in you? And Lord Jesus, would you take the lead in our lives? God, would you do great things through us as you do great things in us? God, we don't want to miss you. You talk to God, whatever's the prayer of your heart today. With as much honesty and humility as in you. Don't be fake about it. But as much honesty and humility as in you, just confess your need for him today. God, we're yours. Here at our church, we want to do everything we can to walk with you as you journey with Jesus in this lifelong journey. If God's getting a hold of your heart today, I'm going to encourage you in these last few minutes, even as we're singing together, to pray and seek him. If you'd like to talk to somebody, pray with somebody, several of our pastors are here. Pastor Scott's right down here in the front. If you want to come find him, I'll be out in the lobby. We can help connect you with someone who can talk with you, pray with you, and encourage you along the way. Because we just have found that following Jesus, our Savior, is the biggest and best decision of our lives. And we want to help you make the biggest and best decision of your life as well. So if we can help in any way, come find us. Let's stand together. Let's raise our voices and let's sing in celebration today. Let's sing about the silent night that became a holy night because of the presence of a holy God. Let's draw near. Let's confess that we need him. Let's sing together today, and then we'll go experience the rest of the holiday with Jesus leading the way. Here we go. Let's raise our voices and sing.